Faith in America this Saturday morning. Religious freedom. It's come under attack in recent years by secularists and the far left. Now the White House has released a new 224-page report by the President's Religious Liberty Commission about the state of what we call our first freedom. The report gives a set of recommendations that would strengthen protections for religious expression and calls for a stronger role for faith in government, schools, and civic spaces. To break it all down, joining me, the President, CEO, and Chief Counsel for the First Liberty Institute and a member of the President's Religious Liberty Commission, Kelly Shackelford, as well as Catholic priest and founder of platinggrace.com. The man makes a great lasagna, Father Leo Patalinghug. Good to see you guys. Thank you so much for being here and for the work that's been done on this important document. Commissioner, I want to start with you. The board spent months hearing testimony of firsthand accounts of religious discrimination. What were some of the most egregious examples of attacks on Americans of faith that really helped inform this report?
Wow, Tom, it's almost hard to summarize that. You know, it's 24-page report. Let me just give you a couple of examples. In the military, for instance, we had a major case at First Liberty that we did where we protected the Navy SEALs. There was an attempt in the Biden vaccine mandate to throw what could have been tens of thousands of our people out of the military who had served us faithfully. And we won that case. And it was a religious freedom protection case that we won. But a lot of people were pushed out before we had gotten the victory in federal court. Right. And one of those persons testified, lost his pension, lost everything, and he had given everything for our country. One of the recommendations you see in the report is, and it really came from Reverend Franklin Graham, he said, can we make these guys whole? Right. And that's one of our recommendations, to make these guys whole. So we have recommendations in all these different areas as a result of what we saw, and that hopefully will correct this from happening to Americans again.
Father Leo, over to you. Eliminating faith from the public square has been a goal of the left in this country for decades, and frankly, they've been pretty successful at doing it. What's the benefit of not just protecting religious expression in this country, but the role of religion in American life? What are some of the benefits, and why is it important?
It is what makes us American, just to be able to practice our religion freely. The word religion comes from the etymology of religere, which means to be bound together. And so people have an inherent right to come together to practice their faith. The struggle is that we have some groups who claim that the freedom to assembly in a religious fashion is against the Constitution, which basically means that they are creating their own religion. And so instead of us worshiping God, they become the gods and tell us who we are to worship. And it's basically the elitist. It's politicians who have anti-religious sentiment. So there's a lot of confusion with what the framers of the Constitution intended. And they gave us the right to practice our religion. And what's interesting is that there is a specific target against Christians. And Christians are what strangely makes America what it is. It's that generosity, it's that hospitality, it's that sense of welcome. It's the sense that we provide health care for people because it's the right thing to do. Right. And we're a country that doesn't discriminate. So it's a real frustration that religion is now being replaced by a false religion of atheism, of relativism, of tyrannicalism.
Yeah. You know, I've always said that that Establishment Clause is one of the most misunderstood components of the Constitution, and the left has taken advantage of the confusion surrounding that language. Commissioner, back over to you. The report laid out 12 recommendations, as you mentioned, to strengthen religious liberty for all Americans, including eliminating something called the Johnson Amendment. Could you talk to us about the Johnson Amendment and its impact on faith communities?
Yeah, back many years ago, you had LBJ, who was criticized, actually, by a nonprofit group during his campaign. And so he slipped in. I mean, there really was no discussion in Congress, a change to the law that said if you're going to be a nonprofit in America, you can't, get into politics. And the problem was he was just thinking about nonprofit, secular groups. I'm sure he was never thinking that, wait, all churches and all religious groups are nonprofits. And so all of a sudden now, you've got churches who are threatened by the IRS if they get too political. And so it's clearly, in my view, as a constitutional lawyer, unconstitutional. But every time we've said, let's go, when the IRS has threatened a church, they immediately drop the investigation because they do not want the decision. And so this is there to kind of scare churches from talking about the moral issues of the day before elections, and it never should be there. It's something. It's a law we need to get rid of for sure.
You know, it's not big P politics. It also includes the small P politics. So just talking about our values and talking about the things that what the faith would teach can then be construed as being political. Father Leo, Democrats in particular, and I know you're not a partisan guy yourself, but Democrats in particular have made sort of this odd case that we're not a nation based on Judeo-Christian values. Socialists and Marxists and secular or atheistic philosophies are on the rise. How do we protect faith in the face of these movements?
Well, first of all, it has to begin in the home. So first and foremost, families need to pray together. They need to be able to communicate the faith in a way that helps the next generations to appreciate how this country was founded with Judeo-Christian principles. Secondly, we have to make sure that the schools are able to teach a true understanding of its history and to make sure that they understand a well-integrated Christian, Judeo-Christian understanding of how our laws came to be. And then we have to not be afraid to be able to speak it out, even if it requires us to be punished for telling the truth. And that's what the role of martyrs have been in our world's history. They spoke out the truth, even if it meant their own demise. But the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the faith. That's what we believe. It continues to grow, and no force can stop it.
Kelly, real quickly for me, what are some of the other recommendations and how will they be implemented moving forward now that this report is in place?
One of the biggest themes, Tom, is that people had such a misunderstanding, as you mentioned, and so the education is so important. So, you know, people will throw out a phrase like separation of church and state, which, of course, that phrase isn't even in the Constitution, and they'll think they have to, the government's supposed to shut down some sort of religious activity. And we saw that over and over and over again. And so that's an example of, let's take the Department of Education could easily lay out religious guidelines for the public schools, just point out what the law already is. They've done that for years. But every school district should really be training their teachers on this, because if they don't, they're scared, they make decisions, they persecute people.
All right, folks, you know, if you don't have religious liberty, all the other rights just simply fade away. Commissioner Kelly Shackelford, Father Leo Patalinghug, thank you both. We appreciate you being here.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.